Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with #1 international best-selling author and entrepreneur, Nicky Billou. He is a Christian immigrant from the Middle East and grateful to live in a free country. He believes business is not a numbers game, it's a people's game. Life is all about people. Business is all about people. He loves people. He is the #1 best-selling author of many books that serve and help people all over the world. He is an in-demand and highly inspirational speaker to corporate audiences. He is also the host of the #1 podcast in the world on thought leadership and has interviewed over 300 of the world's top thought leaders. We get into all of this and so much more. Enjoy.
I like it. Nicky, thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, brother.
So the one thing, I know you're an author and writing can be a solitary activity, but COVID did affect all of us in very specific ways. How did you survive that 2-year time period, and how did it subsequently change not only the way that you live, but the way that you approach your business?
That's a really good question. I mean, our business was very much about live events, and COVID knocked us on our keisters, you know what I mean? But we transitioned online, and once we transitioned online, it worked. People were open to it. Now, it wasn't the same as it was back when we were able to meet people in person, but it was enough to allow us to continue doing our business, right? So we kept our business alive. And I got to tell you, though, I was not one to be a fan of the lockdowns. After a while, I started to see that these lockdowns really were unnecessary. Sure, they made sense in the very early days when none of us knew what this thing was about, but then it became clear that they weren't necessary. So I became one of those folks who pushed back hard against them, and I started to find ways to do stuff, even though we were officially on lockdown. I actually started a business mastermind group, and everybody wanted to meet in person. So we met in person, allowed people to have what people need the most, which is other people. And that's how our business succeeded and thrived.
And I think that's what we learned was community. That was the biggest thing that we all missed when this was raging and going on. I'm going to kind of simplify a little bit exactly what you do, and I want to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day. One of the kids looks up at you and says, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Very simply, I'd say I work with other business owners, and what I do for them is I help them add a zero to their annual income. That's it. That's what I tell them.
Wonderful. Wonderful. How did this journey start for you? You're obviously a very highly driven, optimistic person that has a lot of good business sense about you. Take me back to your childhood. What did you want to do when you were a kid? What was your dream?
Well, I actually wanted to go to West Point and become an officer and fight communism. That's what I wanted to do when I was a kid. But I had this incredible example of my father, who was an entrepreneur, and he's the greatest man I've ever known. My dad was the kind of man who uplifted people. If he knew you and you were looking for work, he'd find you. If you were looking to start a business, he'd help you get a business going. If you worked for him and you were looking to buy a car or a house or an apartment and you didn't have enough money, he'd give you the balance so you could buy that car or that house or that apartment. And he always told me, "Son, life is about people, not money or numbers." Everybody loved my father and respected him, admired him. I mean, years after his death, people would still come to me and say, "Your dad's the greatest man I ever knew. He did this for me. He did that for me. It changed my life." And I always wanted to be like Dad. And when I got into business, I got into the helping professions. I help business owners make more money, essentially. And first thing I noticed is that a lot of business owners, they're amazing people, are not good business people. They don't know how to sell or market or hire or fire or read a balance sheet or read an income statement or a cash flow statement properly. And this just stops them from being able to scale their businesses. In particular, they're scared of selling and marketing. They don't want to come across as pushy or salesy. They don't want to be seen like that Fuller Brush salesman, you know what I mean? Pushy and getting and reeking of commission breath. And that, my friend, was what I saw. And I come from a business family, so I know business. And I just saw, wow, these are good people, and they're scared of selling. Let's help them be better at it, because I look at selling as service, as love. And I thought, well, let's take the word sales out of the equation here, and let's help these folks reframe it from selling to serving. Nobody wants to be sold, but everybody loves to buy, and they love to be served while they're buying. And when I showed people how to rewire their brains around that issue, that alone helped them double, triple, and quadruple their business.
So you have a #1 podcast out there, and you've interviewed 300 of the world's top thought leaders. And I'm curious, there's always there's always kind of a common thread that goes through things. When you talk to people or you're in a certain line of business, there's things that you know, and there's things that are very synonymous. What's one of the common things that you encountered when you talked to people that were really good at what they did and they were good thought leaders?
Well, maybe it's just this is the folks I attracted, but they were all also heart leaders. They care about people. They want people to succeed, to win, to have better lives. You know what I mean, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's #1. And #2, they do original thinking. Like a thought leader is different from an expert, in that an expert is someone who knows something, while a thought leader is someone who's known for knowing something. An expert's like a cover band. A thought leader plays original music, and all these folks play original music.
So you talked about, your dad being a hero, and I'm curious how to take the idea of a hero a step further and ask you this. If you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now, spend a little time with them, who would it be?
Elon Musk.
If you could ask him, if you had 2 questions for him, what would you want to ask him?
What's the biggest challenge you have in your life for business right now that you haven't yet been able to solve? And what are the consequences of you not being able to solve that yet? And then if those challenges were in my bailiwick, I'd ask him if he would allow me to help him. That's it.
Excellent. What is it that motivates you? What is it that every day you wake up, you have a list of things you want to do that fuels you through the day and gets to the end of the day? What motivates you, and what's the definition of a good day for you?
I'm a champion for freedom, free expression, and free enterprise. I'm an immigrant from the Middle East, a Christian from Iran. When I was 11 years old, the Islamic Revolution took place in Iran, and my late father, he realized this was going to be a great place to raise his Christian family, so he got us out of Iran and brought us to Canada eventually. I'm motivated by freedom for myself and helping other people achieve freedom. I want to help preserve our freedoms in the West, in Canada, free expression. The right to choose what we say out there is super important. There's some folks who are trying to shut all that down, and I'm absolutely committed to make sure that we continue to live in a free society. And as far as my work is concerned, I love seeing people become financially free. I want to see people make money. I've had the privilege of helping a whole bunch of people become successful. And I ask God every day to allow me the privilege of helping more people who are suffering get out of suffering and get into success.
So of all of those people that you've helped, what's been one of the best responses you've gotten from a client? Best fan letter you've ever received?
Well, I can tell you a story if you like.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, a woman was introduced to me and my lady. I work with my lady. And this woman had been the country director for Canada for one of the world's largest and oldest personal development firms. She was just an incredible woman. And she had been running this firm for many years, and she brought a man to help her run it who she thought was very talented. Now, at first, everything was going great. But after a while, their visions of the future kind of diverged. Kind of like Steve Jobs back in the day with John Scully at Apple. And just like Steve and John, they started to clash, and she got kicked out of her own company, just like Steve Jobs. How can you get kicked out of your own company? Yeah, well, very, very easily, apparently. So she was lost and bereft for about 18 months, not sure what to do. And then she got introduced to us. And we loved on her. We poured into her. We helped her get clear on her target market, her niche. We helped her get a really great message. We helped her get clear on how she solved the problem and how to communicate it to people. And in her first month, she made $10,000. In her second month, she made $12,000. In her third month, she made $18,000. But in her fourth month, she made $62,200. And that figure will become germane in a moment. And she lives in Ottawa. I live in Toronto. That's a 5-hour drive. And my oldest son, he plays soccer, or as I like to call it, the real football, because it's actually played with your feet. And my boy had a tournament in Ottawa. She has a son his age. Called her up and I said, hey, we got a tourney in Ottawa. How would you and your son like to come and watch and, maybe have lunch with us? And she said, yeah, sure. So we did that. Everybody had a great time, and then we went our separate ways. We drove back home. A few weeks later, we had one of our quarterly branded thought leader immersion workshops. It's a 3-day event where we show people how to add a zero to their income, right? And it's especially good for folks that are in what I call the golden handcuff zone. That's when they're making between $60,000 and $250,000 a year, good money, but not amazing money. You know what I mean? So we were at the point in the workshop where we talked about how people could continue to work with us to sign up for our year-long mastermind program, right? The way I do it is I let our people share their experience. I don't go in there going, hey, we're the biggest, we're the best, you should buy from us. I don't do any of that. So I asked, who'd like to share? And she just, before I could pick anybody, she just bounded on stage and said, me. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she takes a look around the room, and then she starts to bawl. And I mean bawl. And I was like, why is she crying? Like in my head, what did I do? But I stayed calm on the outside. My lady brought her a box of tissues. She blew her nose, and then she turns to me, and between her sobs and her tears goes, Nicky, you didn't know this, but when you and your little son came to visit me and my little son, my little boy asked me, Mommy, who are we going to go meet? And I said, oh, sweetheart, we're going to go meet Nicky Billou and his son. And then she said, he got real quiet and said, oh, Mommy, are we going to go meet the man who saved our family? And, brother, I don't cry in public. I'm old school, but I cried. She and I hugged. And in between both of our sobs, she said, Nicky, when I first came to you, the bank was about to foreclose on our home. We hadn't paid our mortgage in months. My husband and I were fighting every day like cats and dogs, and it looked like we were going to break up. You really helped us save our family by turning things around financially. And anyways, everybody clapped, and she sat down, and then we handed out those registration forms. And normally when we do that, some people sign up, some people don't, and some people need a little persuasive talk. Not on that day. Everybody signed up immediately. And this is a high-ticket, year-long program. But I had a 100% conversion rate in that room. Why? Because that little boy's the best salesman I've ever had, you know?
Yeah.
And
that's wonderful.
I just looked at this woman while she was there, and I realized that God had sent an angel to me. And I just asked God to send me more great angels that I could be of service to.
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful story. So let me get a gauge on, kind of where you're at in your life. And I'm going to ask you this. If you have a dream tonight and you run in to a younger version of yourself, say in your 20s, and you could give that version a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained through your life, what would you tell your young version?
Start your business today.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your clients, but you're in control of your life. You live it. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Look, I'm 55 years old. I'm a father. I'm a friend. And I wear my heart on my sleeve. I care for others, and I want to see them win in life. Sometimes I can be a little pushy. But I always have people's best interests at heart. And I learned that from my dad. And in that way, I'm my father's son.
So if anyone out there wants to learn more about you and your services and what you do, where is the best place for them to go?
eCircleacademy.com has a bunch of resources there. And if they're a business owner and they want to get unstuck from where they're at, I offer something called a success call. That's a complimentary coaching call. And all they got to do to get that is go to eCircleacademy.com/appointment. And they can book an appointment there.
Wonderful. Hey, Nick, thank you for taking time out today to talk about your life, business, the good words. I really appreciate it. Have a great holiday and a wonderful 2023.
Brother, thanks for having me on your show. God bless you.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, and music from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.